On the footsteps of one of Victoria's best-known attractions is an experimental technology that's widely spoken about but rarely understood.
This research is helpful to the rest of the world.
We've had CCS put to one side.
90% of the emissions at Hazelwood will be able to be captured.
Victoria is home to one of the country's most controversial, perhaps notorious, brown coal power plants. In recent weeks, the carbon tax has put it front and centre of the national debate. What the scientists are working on here in Victoria's southwest isn't just an Australian first, it's actually the largest project of its type in the southern hemisphere. Now, opponents of the federal government's carbon tax say there will be thousands of jobs lost in areas like Victoria's Latrobe Valley. The scientists here believe they'll be able to keep power plants like Hazelwood alive for decades to come through the use of modern technology. They say through big plants and experiments like this one, they'll be able to make deep cuts in carbon emissions. The CO2 CRC project is jointly funded by business, the government and universities. The Otway experiment began 8 years ago.
We've injected 65,000 tonne into there.
That's incredible. So tell us how long it takes to inject 65,000 tonne.
Well, we injected about 140 tonne a day, so it was possibly 18 months.
But with this success comes a huge question mark. Tony Abbott has accused the Prime Minister of trying to kill off Victoria's coal industry.
It's very important that we clean up these power stations, not close them down.
We will be working with local communities, not just on the first day, but over time.
I think we've got to really look at the totality of what we're doing in terms of clean energy and have the right sort of mix. And you can't just say, well, we'll put this to one side. It has to be part of that mix. So yes, there is a concern. Do we have enough money being spent on this? Well, you know, from the research point of view, you always need more money for research. But nonetheless, this is so critical that I think we've really got to ensure that we do spend an appropriate level of funding on this.
2 kilometres below, the natural geology comprises a series of thick layers of sandstone that's suitable for the storage of carbon dioxide. The science, as you can imagine, is rather complex, but the explanation can be quite simple. Essentially, for the project to work, you need 2 types of rocks. You start with this reservoir rock. It has these tiny little holes that they pump CO2 in, they mix it with water. It goes in rather like carbonated water, and on top of that they put what they call the cap rock. Now, you can't actually build it. It's something that has to be there. It's usually about 800 metres underground. They say that if they find it on top of each other in perfect formation, well, then the process works.
Victoria has 122 million tonnes of CO2 emitted every year, and 55% of the CO2 emissions actually coming from the Latrobe Valley. And of those in the Latrobe Valley, they are confined to 3 stationary power stations.
But despite the support of scientists from the CSIRO, Melbourne and American universities, the operators feel the carbon tax debate has left them behind. What's your response to people who believe that this is an unproven technology?
CCS is a proven technology, and you can see it in the background here. We're proving it here at a small scale. It's being proved at a much larger scale at a number of projects overseas where they're actually doing this commercially. So to say that it's unproven is quite incorrect. I know that that's said, but it's wrong.
So you work with the local community, more importantly the direct community here. What's their reaction been to the project?
Initially, I think they were concerned. The impression I certainly got was that they were really concerned about what might happen to the groundwater. They're very confident in what we're doing, and they're not they're not worried about it at all. Their cows have not been stressed by it at all.
While the national debate is firmly set on the carbon tax, dozens of researchers are trying to find a way to make dirty power stations a thing of the past.
All of these things are very, very important. We're learning how to handle CO2. So, you know, there's a whole range of really valuable lessons that are actually going to be usable with a whole range of projects, large-scale projects, once they get underway.